22222. All right, Sissy, talk to me for a sec. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Wilder Show podcast. Here we are. Yeah, here we are.
Hello
I'm Scott.
there.
Yeah, that's Lauren over there. Hey, how was your weekend?
Weekend was fine. Is it? I would like to. Is anybody holding on to the outtakes? Because I would like to. I would like to have the little things that you say like right before we start, or I think they could be really, really valuable.
Well, who would save such things?
Who would ever save such things?
We have Instagram. We're on Instagram. If you haven't found it yet, Instagram, Wilder Show on Instagram. That's Wilder Show Pod on Instagram. If you want to send us an email, just do that by sending an email to podcast@wildershow.com. The Wilder Show podcast drops Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and all the places where you get your podcasts. So like, rate, follow, subscribe, and share.
And can I mention one other thing, too? You mentioned the email a minute ago at the top of that, I think. And I was going to mention it again later. You know, sometimes we talk about things on the podcast. We talk about new stories or, you know, studies, things that that we find interesting to us. And it's pretty much, I mean, it's impossible. And it would also probably be kind of boring to just, you know, read the whole thing. There are always some little details we leave out. And we know that you're busy when you're listening. If you ever want more of that, or if you want to link to a story that we talk about, I'm going to mention this later on too, because I think this might apply specifically to something we talk about a little bit later in this podcast.
Yeah.
But you can always, you know, drop a note there and just say, I just want a little more information on that to podcast@wildershow.com, and we will do our best to get that to you quickly.
And we've had people do that, right? We've had some people that have said, hey, where did you get there? Where was that? Well, we'll pass it on to you. So yeah, email. It's great. Email to podcast@wildershow.com. What podcast would be complete without a Trump-Zelensky steel cage death match? Wow, what happened over last Friday? Just look, there are lots and lots of things. There are people on both sides, okay? I know this. I've read journalists that say one thing. I've read people that say the other. I'm going to give you my bullet points on this, and then we'll talk if that's okay. It shouldn't have been on television. It should not have been on television. That thing that happened, the little steel cage death match there in the Oval Office, should not have been on television.
Are things like that usually on television? Why was this on television?
Well, they always have the little sit down, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But where there is, in fact, there was even Joe Biden didn't get along with Zelensky some of the time.
Yeah.
And the difference was it wasn't on camera. And so I don't think it should have been on TV. Well, when is the last time you saw Trump and Vance together? When they were elected, right?
Yeah, the inauguration.
That's it. Look, I like Vance in interviews. I think he's a great defender of all things conservative, but he also is very much the provocateur. It doesn't take much to wind up Donald Trump and point him in a direction and make him go.
He knows where the buttons are.
Boy, I'm telling you, because it all changed. Now, I'm gonna be fair. I'm gonna go to the other side in a second. But all you have to do is say to somebody in front of the president, you don't appreciate him enough. Have you thanked him for all that he has done? Don't you know you wouldn't have, fill in the blank, if it weren't for this man right here? Have you shown him the proper respect and appreciation that he deserves? Well, you can shut up then, because Donald's got it after that.
He'll take it from there.
Yeah, the president's got it after that. And here's really what happened. Everybody saw the last 10 minutes. Very few people saw the first 40 minutes that led up to that. And it speaks to sort of how things can be if we've gone from people who read stories to people who read only opening paragraphs, to people who read only headlines, to people who only read the synopsis of headlines by other people that we see on social media. Because all it takes is one finger in the face or one hand up, hand up like that, and the picture is made and it's all over the world.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good thing. Now, that said, I don't think Zelensky wanted to sign the mineral rights deal anyway.
Really?
I don't think so. There was a lot of talk. I mean, one of the stories that I read said, look, the 40 minutes before it made it perfectly clear that really what J.D. Vance was saying was true. Really what the president was saying was true. But that's not the part that's going to make the news. And so I still say about all these things, take a deep breath and we'll check back in at the 6 and 9 month mark.
Okay.
I just don't think it's worth chasing every one of these things.
There are a lot of every one of these things, though. No, well, do you ever worry that there are going to be so many that it's going to be hard to follow up on all of them?
Sure. Well, no, all I mean to say is a lot of these things will fade away.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go to the question of, are the prices generally
You mean
better?
they won't be important?
They won't be.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the things, it's like, what do people say? I'm going to make a list of all the things I'm going to ask God when I see him.
Right.
And then the truth is, when you see him one day in the air, those all fade away. It doesn't matter anymore. Mm-hmm. Now, see, if Trump heard me say that, he'd think I was thinking of him as God.
I know.
But that's not,
I know.
That's not at all what I was talking about. I just meant that what's important will be made clear. And I think in the same way, we're going to be able to look up and see, are fuel prices generally better at the 6 month mark, at the 9 month mark? Are the food prices generally better at the 6 month mark, 9 month mark? The immigration, is that better? 6 month mark, 9 month mark. But looking at it every single day, it can be maddening.
Well, I think there are people too who they would tell you that those are the things that are most important. That the food well, yeah, there are people who would tell you that those are their priorities. But then there are other people, the people who did not vote for him, who did not want to see him in office, and had a whole list of reasons why they didn't want to. And these are exactly the kinds of things that they would have said are important to them. And I think, for people who want to be able to defend all of these little things, may not be that little actually in the scheme of things. I don't even really know. I agree with what you're saying. You can't chase all of them. But I think a lot of people want to be able to, they don't want to say, just wait, just wait. They want to be able to, have a reason why either this isn't that big a deal, or this, you missed the first 40 minutes of this. And it's hard to follow all of it. It's hard to know all of that stuff.
Generally, people like the things that reinforce their own belief.
Absolutely.
So it's like when those things happen, I really want to pay attention to those. When the president is doing something that if I voted against him or I didn't vote for him, if I can find a way to catch him, see, this is exactly who he is, sort of thing. And then the people on the other side, that's why I say everybody just, take it easy just a little bit and let's kind of wait and see where we are at the end of the 6 months, the end of the 9 months.
That's reasonable.
Because otherwise it makes me crazy. I mean, I watch people that do it, and I don't do it. I pay more attention to this stuff than maybe some people do, and certainly less than others do. The president is going to give it's not the rule on this, right? It's not a State of the Union address. I mean, it is the president, and it is the time when the State of the Union address is given. Mm-hmm. But the first year that you are president, that is not called a State of the Union address.
That's right. I had forgotten that.
It is simply a speech to the joint session of Congress.
Gotcha.
It's sort of like in a courtroom. People say it's opening arguments, closing arguments. Not really. It's opening statement and closing argument. So you don't really do an opening argument. You do an opening statement. And then later, after all the information is there, you put it into an argument. Anyway, it is a joint session of Congress speech and not State of the Union. Mm-hmm. So could I give some of my greatest expectations and greatest fears as we get ready for what's going to happen tonight?
Do you have more fears than you have expectations, or the other way around?
Well, if someone were to say, what would you like to hear from the president tonight? I would say as little as possible.
Well, I can pretty much tell you that will not happen.
I know. But that is my answer.
Okay.
As little as possible.
Okay.
I want it to be, I know I'm dreaming, I want it to be the shortest speech ever given to the joint session of Congress.
Do you know what the shortest one is so far, like up to this point in time?
I really don't, but I was reading the Gettysburg Address over the weekend. I really was. Your Gettysburg Address is only 10 sentences long. It's 271 words. Isn't that something?
Do you think we could hope for anything even close to that?
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be nice?
And also I was just reminded, I'm really, really going far afield, but I was reminded this last weekend, that Abraham Lincoln was not voted by the majority. There were 4 that were running. He was a simple plurality. So he did not, going into the Civil War, he did not even have the majority of the country's support anyway. But I digress. I would like to hear as little as possible from the president. I want him to say what he's going to say, but let's talk about the future, not the past.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about crowd size. I don't want to hear about Hillary. I don't even hear about Biden, where I know it's got to be, we're doing this, and the other is a great failure. The other guy's a loser. And I don't want to hear all that.
Those are the things you don't want to hear, right?
No, I don't want to hear any of those things. I really, really don't.
Concise.
Concise.
Positive.
Yes, Lauren, concise and you know how I live my life.
That is you. That is really you.
Well, concise. I'm neither concise nor positive, but concise and I don't want to look back. I don't looking back. I don't want to hear about Biden. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. I don't want to hear name calling. Let's just.
I was going to say it's neither the place nor the time, but I don't really know if there is a place or a time.
I don't think, for the president, I don't think there is everything is what he wants it to be.
Yeah.
He does what he wants to do. And look, I'm not saying that it can't be okay if he does it. I'm saying what are the best practices? Mm-hmm. The best, if things are getting heated with Zelensky, here's what you say. You say, you know what? Thank you for being here. We're going to excuse the press pool, and we'll continue this conversation in private. It really sort of demands a moment alone.
They would have gotten, or he would have gotten heat for that.
No question. But the thing here is, I don't think Trump looked weak. I'm not saying that. I think he looked strong. J.D. Vance looked strong. We're not your sugar daddy anymore. The USA will not be. He didn't say that. I'm surprised he didn't say that. That's the kind of thing he would say. But we're not your sugar. Look,
don't give him any ideas.
We're not your sugar daddy anymore. We're not your sugar daddy, and we're not going to just keep paying and paying and paying. And all these European countries now, they talk about how they're all on the heels of getting booted out of. There's supposed to be a lunch afterwards. You knew that, right?
I did know that.
There was and that was canceled. Basically, he said, get them the heck out of here.
That's right.
And they were basically kicked out of the White House. So all these European countries' leaders are going, come over here. It's okay, little fella. And you can come over here. We'll help you.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you know what? Let me see the money. You say you're going to help them. You don't do anything. We end up paying for everything, the United States. And if you want to help them, then fund them. And by the way, you're not going to see that. You're going to see a lot of people getting some headlines for, the president didn't do the right thing, but we're here for you. You know what? If you're not there for them in funding, you're not there for them. The real deal is this. Zelensky cut a deal with Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave him a blank check. They're up to $300 billion. Let me say it a different way. $1/3 trillion with potentially no end in sight. And what Donald Trump has said is, we're going to put an end to this. And is he snugly with Putin? I have no idea, but I do know this. There's nobody else in the world that'll get Putin to the table like Donald Trump can get him to the table.
Yeah.
So if you get some kind of concession from one side and some kind of concession from the other, maybe they can come together. Look, the truth is, I think Donald Trump wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I really do. I think that's on his mind. If I can bring these people together, if we end the Ukrainian war, if we can bring the Gaza and the Israel thing under control, perhaps I could win the Nobel Peace Prize. I actually think that's on his mind. Anyway, so I would like to hear as little as possible from the president tonight. I will be watching every second of it. And I just don't want to hear any nonsense and foolishness. I don't want to hear nonsense and foolishness. There are some Democrats that are not going. They're not even going at all.
And you mean in protest?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't want to go. I'm not going to go and hear his lies or whatever. But I think that's so childish. I mean, if everybody only went to the people that they agree with, you don't have half the room filled anytime.
All the time, right?
I just say, salute the rank, not the man. Your side lost. You guys still don't get it. I mean, I know I've said that 1,000 times, but they don't. I was watching the news shows over the weekend. They have no idea. I mean, they were talking about Chuck Schumer was saying the advice is to Democrats, play dead. Just play dead. Don't do anything and let the Republicans, implode. And to his credit, even Bernie Sanders was asked, do you agree with that? He said, no.
Wait, whose advice was that?
That was Chuck Schumer.
Huh.
2 Democrats. And Bernie Sanders said, no. The problem is the Democrats have played dead for too long. And, they don't do the one thing they should do. Find something they can agree with the president on, work hard to get it done, take credit for it getting done, and lead up to the midterm. They won't do it. And honestly, it's to their detriment, and it's to my great enjoyment. And so I'm not opposed to them being silly at all.
No, I gotcha. Been to any cheerleading conferences lately?
As a matter of fact, no. I've never been to a
I was going to say, really?
cheerleading. I've never been. Have you been? I've never been to a cheerleading.
I've been to a couple of competitions. I think.
Did you had a cheerleader? I think was that why you went? Or you went for fun?
Yes, I had a cheerleader for 1 year, and that's the extent of my experience. I was certainly never at anything as big as the 2025 NCAA All-Star National Championships that took place in Dallas over the weekend.
Oh,
you hear about this? It was the 30th anniversary.
It did not go well.
It did not well.
Okay,
I think it was going great until, you've heard the reports. I think now, at the time, there were reports that there was an active shooter and there were people, fleeing the building. And then there were other people in practice rooms that were on lockdown. There was what is being called a stampede of people leaving the building. More than 24 Dallas police units responded downtown about 1 o'clock on Saturday to reports of an active shooter at the convention center. This was at the Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center, not very far from Dallas City Hall. But what police finally determined was that it was a fight that broke out between 2 people. I don't know if these were disgruntled parents. I mean, it doesn't seem that unlikely, maybe, not because it was a cheerleading conference, but because it was any kind of thing where parents are watching their kids perform. But I don't know. I don't know if it was parents or what. But so there was a fight, led to multiple poles being knocked down. That loud noise caused a panic, and then people rushed outside in a stampede. 10 people hurt, none of them they were taken to the hospital. Non-life-threatening injuries, bruises, scrapes, but also extremity fractures. So that's not nuts. I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, there were 30,410 athletes there from
what?
I know.
Wait.
I know.
Wait. Did you say 30,000?
30,410 athletes over the course of this weekend.
I thought you said this was a cheerleading competition.
I knew you were going to say that. If you can call cheerleaders
no,
athletes.
of course. They're very athletic.
Of course they are. 43 states and 9 countries. Yeah. So if you add to that the number of parents and spectators, people that came along with the cheerleaders, that's a lot of people there. So when you imagine, people, running out the doors to try to get away, they had, reunification sites at the Dallas Police headquarters. If you lost your people in the in the scramble to get out of the building, places where you could go find them. I mean, it was crazy.
I think of the Texas high school cheerleader and a fracas that is going on that is not the kids, then I think of the moms. Like for Little League Baseball, I would think of the dads going out of control.
Right.
But like a mom being like super interested in reliving her whatever and supporting her daughter.
There were moms and dads there, and still, I don't know. I mean, if there's, if you have an update on this, let us know at podcast@wildershow.com. But I still don't know if this was a fight between 2 parents, if it was a fight between 2 kids. I don't know what it was, but apparently it started off just that small, and because of the noise that was made when the polls came down, that's what made people think active shooter. And I think, isn't that on the top of people's mind so much more than it ever was before? If you're on Nextdoor, or if your Ring camera or something has that neighborhood function, I can't tell you how many times. I mean, almost once a day, I see a message from somebody that says, "Was that a gunshot?" And I mean, it can't possibly be gunshots every time people think it's a gunshot, but I think we're so, we have such a heightened sense of that now that you hear any noise and you think, gunshot? It's kind of sad.
30,400?
30,000. Yeah, let me go back to those.
My goodness.
There were like 1,700 teams.
That's a lot. That's a lot of. Yeah. That's a lot of ready okaying.
Wait, it's a what?
Don't they say ready okay?
Ready okay.
As they slap their legs and they're ready to. Ready?
It is a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot. Yeah, it was like 1,714 teams, 30,410 athletes. Coming from 43 states. And initially, I was going to say, people came from all over the country. They came from 9 different countries. Sure. It's the biggest gathering like this, the biggest contest like this that happens every year.
This sounds silly, I guess. I don't even think about it, but I didn't even know they had cheerleaders in other countries. I don't know that I've ever seen cheerleaders like, in other countries. I like soccer. They're not cheerleaders for soccer or European football. Rugby, I've never seen cheerleaders. So I didn't even know there were maybe high schools in the other countries.
That must be what it is.
Yeah, because I've never even seen that.
I guess if you're entrenched in the cheerleading thing, you'd know more about it. But I didn't. That surprised me too. 9 different countries.
All right, cheerleader mom, send Lauren an email, podcast@wildershow.com. The president signed something over the weekend we'll get to in a second, but totally different. How many languages do you speak, Lauren? How many languages
I barely speak one. I try. I mean, English. I took so where I grew up in Minneapolis, the way that kids take Spanish in Texas, where we live now, we took German. So like starting in fourth grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, German was the mandatory language that you were taught. I remember. I mean,
was it mandatory?
Eins, zwei, drei. Oh yeah, you start in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. You took German. I can count. Maybe I can count to 10. I remember that a jacket is a Jacke.
Okay.
Jacke, because it was Minneapolis. We wore a lot of jackets. That's really all I remember. And then I took French in high school. Again, I mean, learning is fun.
Right.
Learning is valuable. I remember none of the French. I'm sure it expanded my mind in other ways. And then I took Spanish in college, and I can't really speak that either.
Well, I've traveled a lot, and I've seen a lot of the world, and a lot of people talk about how, these other countries, I mean, they speak 5 languages.
I know.
These kids speak 5, and I know in Africa, I mean, they speak the tribal language, they speak this language, that language, but they also speak English, and we're always sort of beaten down by that, by people who say, look, these other people are learning our language, why don't we learn other people's language, like they do it like as a favor or to honor the country. They do it because it's a language of commerce. Right. That's the only reason, I promise you. Let me give you an example. You know that there is an official language of aviation.
What is it?
English.
Okay.
Everyone that is an air traffic controller and every pilot has to pass a test that is an English test.
And no other language? They don't have to know?
They can speak other languages, but
they don't have to know it.
No. When you're talking on the cockpit little walkie-talkie to the people
the
down on Earth.
The
radio. You're speaking English. Now, you might speak your own language to your buddy there in the cockpit, but you are speaking English. That is the official language.
I had no idea.
Well, you got to think. If you think about it, how would you ever have German planes knowing where they're going to land in New York, or planes from Chicago landing in Ethiopia?
It makes
if
perfect
you didn't have
sense.
A common, so it's practical.
Sure.
And that's the same reason why people have learned English. It's not because they want to honor our country or they're so good and we're so bad because we won't learn other languages. You want to learn other languages? Learn other languages. I took French in high school. My dad said, you should take Spanish. We live in Texas. Why are you taking French? I said, because she's taking French.
There's a pretty girl.
And after 2 years of French, I couldn't speak French, and I didn't get the girl. So it was a complete bust. Should have taken Spanish.
I bet there was a pretty girl in there, too. You probably just hadn't met her yet.
At least a couple. I bring it up because the president has signed an executive order over the weekend. You may not even know this. It happened over the weekend. Happened yesterday. No, it happened on Saturday. English is now the official language of the United States of America.
It wasn't already?
No. It has been a big fight for a long time. It is the official language of 30 states, but there is no official language of the United States of America. We have held off in doing that. Let me pause that for a second. If you wanted to sell goods, let's say you want to sell paper towels in all of North America, and that would include Canada, right?
Yeah.
North America. You want to sell Scott towels in Canada. I want you to look at your Scott towels and see if you don't find something written in English and also in French. You know why?
Why?
That every single good that gets sold in Canada has to be also written in French. And so, because you don't want to have just one set of packaging that goes to the lower 48 and then another set of packaging that goes to Canada, you want to put them in the boxes, and so you put both languages on.
Sure.
So, but in the same way, the United States now has an official language. All it really does is rescind a policy issued by Bill Clinton. And that policy required agencies to provide assistance programs for people with limited English proficiency. Now, this new thing does not keep agencies from doing that. You still can do that if you want to. The order allows agencies to voluntarily keep those support systems in place, but it doesn't mandate it. So it basically says, if you want to play, you got to learn the language. And if you don't learn the language, there's no guarantee everybody else is going to bend around you. And there's a part of this I like, because I think it's not enough to have your feet land here in the United States. You got to become one of us. You don't just come to live here and take from here and never assimilate. Assimilation is part of it.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that things that encourage assimilation are good. And according to the president, it will promote unity, cultivate a shared American culture for all citizens, ensure consistency in government operations, and create a pathway to a civic engagement. I think it makes sense. If you go to live in Germany, you better learn German. You can't walk around being mad because people don't, learn your language.
Yeah.
Here's the opposition. Our founding fathers enshrined freedom of speech in the First Amendment without limiting it to one language. They envisioned a nation where diversity of thought and culture and expression would be its greatest strength, said Roman Palomares, who heads the LULAC, a League of United Latin American Citizens, and he criticized the president. Declaring English as the only official language directly contradicts that vision of the founders. America thrives when we embrace inclusivity, not when we silence the voices of millions who contribute to this success. Nobody's trying to silence anyone.
No,
We're trying to get it where we understand you. We have a language that is a common language. Forget about official. It is the common language. Yeah. This is the common language. You want to be a part of it. You can't just come to the country and say, well, I'm not going to change, but I'll haul my kids around to interpret.
Well, let me ask you a question. This might be a dumb question. I'm guessing other countries have official languages.
Well, I think to the extent that they demand even on the labeling. I know that in Quebec, certainly parts of Canada, that is their official. I'd have to look that up. I don't know the answer to that directly, but sure, absolutely. I mean, if you're in China, you speak the common language. Whether it is the official language or not, I don't know. I would guess certainly that it is, and that's okay. I know that there are official languages in many of the countries of Africa, but that doesn't mean you can't speak these other languages. Of course you can speak any language you want to speak. Nobody's telling you can't speak those languages, but it's just how much the society has to bend around to make sure that you're understood. The burden should fall on the individual to assimilate into society.
And to be sure that you're in charge of knowing whether or not people can understand you and whether you can understand the people in this new land where you are.
Well, welcome. Hit the books. Oh, it's time for Scattershoot.
Let's go.
Scattershoot Wilder Show podcast. Scattershoot.
There's a new definition of dyslexia.
This makes me think of something else, and I'm going to ask you about it.
Okay.
In a second, but let me guess. It is an expanded definition of a dyslexia.
It's a little bit expanded, and I have some now. Okay, my experience with this is nearly, I was going to say 20 years old. It's not really 20 years or so ago. I had, one of my kids was diagnosed with dyslexia. Actually, maybe even a little bit more than that. But we dealt with it all through school, through high school, and then even a little bit into college with accommodations and modifications and things like that. So I read this thing with great interest. Some of this I already knew. I knew what some of the challenges were. There was this study in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry. For more than a century, educators, psychologists, and researchers have disagreed about what dyslexia is. And that's one of the first things I learned. Dyslexia is like this one little umbrella word, but it covers so many different things.
For those of us who don't know, I mean, what is or what has been the definition of dyslexia?
Well, even a lot of things. It didn't have a firm enough diagnosis that kids were able to be treated in a way that would help them mitigate. It's not something that you can cure. It's not something that goes away.
Is there a test for it, or
there are tests for it?
So you can. So if you didn't even have any of the indicators and you wanted to find out, you could take a test.
You could.
And it would determine, but it's not like a blood test, right?
No.
Okay, well, tell me, because I don't know.
So in my case, this was my daughter. She was the youngest of my 3 kids. I had watched 2 kids learn how to read. And I had seen the things that were challenges and the things that they got through really quickly. And then watching this 3rd child learn how to read, not only were there already signs that her teachers were seeing that were things that were just harder for her to remember what the sounds were that went with the letters, things like that. So they were seeing that. And I also could see, because I'd seen 2, kids without dyslexia learn how to read, I could tell that it was a real challenge for her. It's not as simple. A lot of people, if you say, dyslexia, they think that it's just, getting letters in the wrong order, maybe, or maybe a reversing a letter. A B appears as a D and a D appears as a B. And it can be those things, but it can be a lot of other things too. There are multiple factors. It can be processing speech sounds. That's like the most common issue in dyslexia. It's not the whole story, though. It can affect working memory, which is something I think we used to call reading comprehension.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Or, processing speed, the ability to recognize and remember letter patterns, also a big deal. It can affect other subjects, like how well a kid can do in math, because what do you have to be able to do a lot of times to do well in math? You have to be able to read and comprehend what you're reading.
All right, let me ask you now: is all that you've given, is that the new definition, or is that the old definition? How is it changing? You said there's a new definition for dyslexia, and I'm trying to figure out: is it that's the old and now it's more expanded, or
no? It's acknowledging that all of those things fall under the category, fall under the term dyslexia.
Okay. And you were saying before it was mainly a reading and a letters. That's the way people viewed it before, and now it's more than that.
Well, they didn't really even know they didn't have all of that in one place. There were some people, who had this kind of personal experience, and other people had this personal experience. And some thought, do we even call it, a problem? Is it something that even needs special support for kids in a classroom?
It reminds me a lot of autism. And what I mean, so the topic reminds me of the topic of autism. Remember when there was a year? It's so odd because there was this, even with the whole thing with RFK Jr.
Yeah.
You know, and anti-vax and all, and everybody said vaccines cause autism, and that's been debunked and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to get an argument about that. But my point is, when people would ask, well, wait a minute, 20 years ago or 40 years ago, only 1 in 250 had autism. And now it's like 1 in 36 or whatever the number is. Well, when you change the definition of something, it's going to change how many people would be in that category. Does that make sense?
It does.
So when you make it, it's not that all of a sudden, and that's the way it's been sold. I mean, even Donald Trump was talking about that. I don't know what's going on. I mean, when I was a kid, it was 1 out of whatever. Now it's 1 out of whatever. And so, they changed the definition of it. So there might have been people back then that were that. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden these people are getting or becoming autistic. It just means the definition of what is autism has changed. It's broadened. That's all.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. And just since you mentioned numbers, in that there are estimates ranging from 5% to 20% of the population would be considered dyslexic. That's based on, different criteria. But the reason that this is so important is if you have a definition that applies to everyone, it makes it so much easier for kids to be identified early, diagnosed early. And the earlier you can identify it in a child, diagnose it in a child, the earlier you can get them, the help that they need.
No question.
There are the definition that we've talked about here, the new definition of dyslexia. It's like 8 or so bullet points. If this is something that you think might apply to your kid or something that you are dealing with right now, and all of these things, like whether or not you have a diagnosis, that can matter as to whether or not you qualify or your child qualifies for services at their public school. These are really important things, and I'd be more than happy to send a link to this article to you if you're curious or if you're interested. If you just shoot an email to podcast@wildershow.com, I'll send you the whole thing.
Think of it this way. If a kid needed glasses to see, you got to go to the doctor and get the prescription so you get the glasses. And the sooner you get the glasses, the sooner the kid can learn and see the board from wherever they're sitting in the, out there with the kids.
Yeah.
And so it's the same kind of thing. If you get it diagnosed early, you can, get the accommodations, get everything that you need to get to make sure that, and boy, when you get that early for kids, when my kids were in school, I had sort of three phases for my kids. The stuff that I wanted in elementary school, really up through 6th grade. In my view, it was all about self-confidence and self-image. It wasn't about grades. It wasn't about any of that stuff. It was just about your confidence, to build their confidence, not in a fake way, not in a phony way, but in a real way, for them to have a good sense of self-worth.
Sure.
Their self-worth and just, that was the most important thing to me. In 7th and 8th grade, it was all about developing good habits. Just what is a good habit for studying or a good habit for waking up or sleeping? What are those good habits? And then, because you take that confidence, that self-assurance that you got in the first 6 years, and you take it into, okay, we're going to build on that, and now we're going to start with good habits. You already feel good about yourself. Now we're going to apply ourselves. And then the last 4 years, sort of the gun goes off for the race in 9th grade. Now you go to apply all that. You have the self-confidence. You have the good habits. Now we're going to apply it to everything you learn. And that's when it gets important that you're not just concerned about A and E, attitude and effort. You're talking about the grades they get that can assist them in getting where they want to go, whether it's to the school they want to go to or whatever. But, if you get that, the confidence that the child can have in elementary school, or the crushing lack of confidence a child can have, and if that can be changed by knowing a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, if you want that whole article, just send us an email, podcast@wildershow.com. Never been a big fan of boycotts.
No, me either.
I don't. Now, I've done them. I've done maybe a couple, but I've never done them to like bring people to their knees, corporations to their knees.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot harder to do that than people think. Maybe the Target boycott worked. There was about that whole whatever somebody they had as a spokesperson that people.
Oh, who was it?
It was that girl that's a guy or a guy that's a girl. What is it? Mulvaney or something?
Oh,
remember that?
Dylan Mulvaney. But wait, that was a Target thing? I thought that was a beer thing.
No. Beer. Well, maybe that was. I think it was. That was a Bud Light thing, wasn't it? Yeah, that was Bud Light. I'm sorry, Target. Well, I shouldn't be sorry. We can't be ashamed of anything anymore. So I'm not putting. But there was something else with Target. There was something with Target that people were.
Maybe something they were selling in June.
Know. Maybe so. I don't know. It was expanded third-party stuff or something. Yeah. And anyway, they got boycotted, and maybe that was successful. Bud Light got boycotted, and I think it did make an impact on the company. But I'm not just talking about getting some attention in the press. I'm talking about making a real dent in revenue. Mm-hmm. Are they really, really effective? And I bring that up because you may have seen this in your social media. There was an economic blackout Friday, this last Friday.
I think I did read something
where
that.
People were not, if you wanted to be a part of it, and this was all in response to Donald Trump's position on DEI, right? Is we don't like what the president's doing for DEI, so when companies will come around and John Leguizamo and Bette Midler, and a bunch of people shared about this. Don't buy groceries, don't buy anything on Amazon, and then there are some specific target dates for some things. Like Friday,
you mean things don't buy these things on.
Well, like on
this
one
day and,
yep. Like okay. This week is going to be against these guys, and this week is going to be against these guys.
Oh, you mean don't buy at certain places?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think it's going to make a lick of difference. I don't.
So,
I really don't.
And it really might not. And I think, but still, sometimes, I mean, you can, if you feel strongly about something.
Well, that's a different thing.
You might not
even.
Agree. It might not even matter.
That's
if
right.
You're going to
that's
see
right.
Some kind of result. On a large scale, but you just know that you're doing the right thing, and that's enough.
And that really is where I've been. Mm-hmm. That's really where I've been. I've been there where I don't expect, in the old days, the church days and the Disney and all the Disney stuff, got to boycott Disney. Listen, man, Christian families still take their families to Disney World and doing the Disneyland thing. You're not going to make a real dent in that. If you don't want to go, don't go. There was a movie theater I didn't go to for a year. Big deal. How many times a year do I even go to a movie? So in those days, more than these days, but right. I didn't go to a movie, and I didn't expect it to make a big deal, and I didn't write letters and all that stuff. I I wasn't going to spend my money with someone who would do fill in the blank, whatever it is. I'm not going to spend my money that way. Well, those who support DEI are Costco, Apple, Ben & Jerry, Chase, Best Buy, Macy's, Walgreens, Old Navy, Dollar Tree, Jamba, Cinnabon. Goes on and on. I mean, Whole Foods, of course, Trader Joe's, Sephora, Gap, CVS, on and on, Chipotle.
That's not how you say that. I know you know that.
Home Depot, Auntie Anne's. Now, here are the ones that do not support, and by the way, nobody's boycotting the support DEIs that I know of, but they do not support are McDonald's, Walmart, Target, Ford, Lowe's, Harley-Davidson, Brown, Foreman, whatever that is, John Deere. Starbucks has backed out a little bit. You may have noticed.
Really?
That's kind of big for them, especially in that part of the world. Amazon, Burger King, KFC, Wendy's, Sam's Club, Hobby Lobby, of course, and Chick-fil-A, of course. Mm-hmm. And so there are very targeted dates. There are dates to boycott these particular places. This is the date for Ford. It's like, okay, so you're going to buy a Ford on a Saturday, but not that week. It doesn't really make sense to me.
No.
And I look, I support it. People want to do that. That's your business. Here's the hit list. February 28th was the economic blackout. And that is nobody buys anything at all. You don't buy food. You don't buy gas. You don't buy nothing. You don't spend online. You don't do. I assume you still run your electricity in your house. So technically you're doing that. But and if you have your internet, you're using the internet. So, But I'm not trying to be picky. I just, anyway, it was an economic boycott. Don't spend any money on that day.
Okay.
March 7th through the 14th is the Amazon boycott. Now, again, these are people that want to boycott people who in their view, have capitulated on DEI. DEI was really big. That's diversity, equity, inclusion. Right. DEI was really big, and when it was, under one administration, and now Trump comes in, and they go, I don't have to do that anymore. Let's don't do it. And so they did away with it. So Amazon boycott of March 7th through 14th. March 22nd through 28th, Lauren, is the Nestle boycott.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that.
I'm not going to boycott any of it, yeah. April 7th through 14th is Walmart boycott. Uh-huh. April 18th is another economic economic blackout. It's listed here as economic blackout number 2.
I don't know
and then
anything.
One more General Mills boycott. So is that Cheerios? General Mills boycott is April 21st through 28th. And all I'm saying is, I've always said it's got to be really specific.
This is not that.
Well, it's specific and it's to dates, but it's like, how are you going to measure the success? You're not going to be able to find. You take an economic blackout for a day.
Yeah.
How does it even know? It's not. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Well,
how would you measure that?
I have heard you say so many times about how hard we are to motivate. That seems like you're asking a lot over a lot of different. And I'm not saying it's if this is something that's really important to you,
sure,
and really valuable to you, and you think that it can make a difference, do it. But to me, it sounds like I'm having a hard time thinking of a group of people who would say, yeah, let's start that and let's do it all the way through. And I'm going to mark all these days on my calendar and I'm going to stick. I don't know. It just seems like, we got a lot of scrolling to do. We have a lot of other stuff to keep us busy. Here's
a little more information. Grassroots organization hoping to fight back. Sarah Silverman also is a part of this.
Okay.
Hoping to fight back against the corporate rollback of diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI initiatives, is encouraging shoppers to avoid big box retailers and hold back on consumer purchasing during the 24-hour long boycott on Friday, February 28th. Let me tell you what it is like, and I'm not being critical. If you believe in this, you should do it, and that's great. Everybody should do whatever they feel led to do. I'm not going to poo-poo that or make fun of it, but I will say it sort of feels like an eating plan that will result in you not losing any weight.
Yeah. Well, I
did this on this day, and I didn't do this on this day, and I did these 3 things, and I only ate grapefruit on whatever before 4 a.m., and I didn't lose a pound. If you want to make a difference, now this may bring a consciousness, and that you could say is a difference. But if you're trying to bring a corporation to its knees, you need somebody like Kid Rock to blow up a case of Bud Light and put it on Instagram. That brought that Anheuser-Busch to its knees.
Yeah.
They've still not recovered.
One of the things you just mentioned that happened last Friday. So that happened already.
It did.
On Friday, February 28th.
Yeah.
Do we know, are there any
updates?
Was there any response or anything? It seems like if you could tell the people who are, in your corner on this, look at how great this went. Yeah, sure. I mean that it would people would be buoyed by the success and continue.
There is one thing I can say.
What's that?
Target's online traffic dropped, and Costco had an uptick. So in that list that I just gave you, Costco is a pro DEI, and Target was on the anti-DEI. Was that right?
I'm not sure.
I didn't remember that Target was Target's kind of... Anyway, on Blackout Day, Target website visitors dropped 9% compared to February 14th.
You're also counting on people... I mean, just like us now, you're counting on people remembering.
Yeah. It's
where am
crazy.
I supposed to go?
No,
where should I not go?
It's crazy.
Who should I... Yeah.
On Blackout Day, Target web visitors dropped 9% compared to Friday, February 14th. From 5.2 million to 4.7 million. Can I tell you one thing about that? What is February the 14th?
Valentine's Day.
So if somebody's out there looking for stuff, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
It doesn't mean anything. There's not apples and apples.
Although web gifts, I guess, web purchases, you can buy things at Target on the web and have them waiting for you later that day. So you could buy your Valentine treats online at Target on Valentine's Day.
On Blackout Day, the nation's number one retailer, Walmart, experienced a 5% slump in web traffic, down from, again, 11.7 million on February 14th. But guess what else you could do? On February 14th at Walmart, you could order something and go pick it up.
Of course.
At Walmart. These are fake. Lauren, write this phrase down.
Let me get a pen.
Get a pen.
Okay.
Fake news. There you go.
But
that really is. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody runs around. They find the things that support the thing they believe. I'm not saying it couldn't be have an impact. It might have an impact. But when you compare shopping to the shopping that took place on Valentine's Day at a retailer where both of those, Target and Walmart, where you can say pick up in the parking lot. I mean, it's what guys do when there are no more white tents at Kroger.
That's why they don't need the white tents anymore.
That's right. We have to go somewhere, and that's anyway. But boycotts generally, I would never tell someone not to do it. If you feel led to do it, you should do it. Just have reasonable expectations. That's all. Tamp down the expectations. I think because it might be that it doesn't have the impact that you and the gang think that it does.
I'm with you. I have one more little thing for you. I was going to ask you a question. It's not really fair, though, because you and I text enough that I kind of already know the answer to this question. But I was going to ask you if you use correct grammar in your texts. And I think you do. I mean, mostly you do. Maybe you leave off a period every now and again.
I don't say the letter R and then U.
No. Yeah.
I do write Y for yes.
Yes.
I don't always type out the word yes.
Listen, I did that for a while with my kids. I would just use, this was a long time ago.
Word,
I would just use the
Y?
letter Y.
And they would say
yes.
why.
They thought I was asking them why.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it was, we had to work all that stuff out. It was like learning a new language for a while there.
My boys turned 30 over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And Chris was in town, and so we had a great little gathering for them. So happy birthday to the Wilder boys.
Very nice.
The womb mates before room mates. But I bring them up because they still type out a full yes, sir.
In a text message? Wow.
YESSIR.
By now, they might not even really have to type it all out.
Yeah.
They're just they
knows.
type in YE and it fills in the rest of it.
I didn't mean to derail you. Go ahead.
No, not at all. Not at all. Less than a quarter of Gen Z use periods, commas, and quotation marks in their casual communications. Now, in comparison, more than half of people, so more than 55% over the age of 65. Now, we're not quite there yet, but they say they're always sticklers for proper grammar while texting or posting online. I kind of feel like I am a stickler for that. I mean, if not good grammar, then what? But this is the thing that really broke my heart. Only half of Gen Z and millennials, so these are all my kids fall into that. I think I got a couple of millennials and one Gen Z. Only half of them bother to differentiate between their and their.
I can't stand
Do you
that.
know how many hours I spent and how many cute little tricks and how many things I wrote on chalkboards in the house and little notes in lunch boxes because I wanted so badly. I thought if nothing else, we're going to know the your and the your. We're going to know the two and two, and we're going to know the there and there. And like half of them don't even bother with that. But this rises with age to 80% again among people over 65. So at least we might be losing our muscle tone, but at least we're still civilized.
We're still obsessed with. Well, that's tough for an Oxford comma guy.
Yeah, I bet it is.
I'm in Oxford. You're Oxford comma, aren't you?
Yeah. For the most part.
Oh, I'm real.
I'm not a real stickler.
But I mean, when I'm writing things, I always think if people don't know what the Oxford comma is, there's a debate about, let's say you have three things. Let's say you have, let's say four things: eggs, bacon, orange juice, and toast. And you say, what did you have for breakfast? You say, I had eggs, bacon, orange juice, and toast. Now, where do the commas go? The Oxford comma people will say, here's where they go. After eggs, after bacon, after orange juice, preceding the word and then toast is in there, so no period at the end of that. Now, here's what that means. If you don't do that, Lauren, when you're reckless with your commas, when you don't do that, instead of having your breakfast meal be eggs, bacon, orange juice, and toast, you have eggs, bacon, orange juice, and toast, which means your toast has all mixed in with your orange juice. It's all soggy. I'm not kidding. That is sort of the implication, is that those two things are a part of the same. So that comma is the separation. So you don't have soggy toast that tastes like orange juice. You want to have eggs, bacon, orange juice, and toast. So the commas go after each of those. Now, you could argue that the and separates in a way that you don't need that comma, and that is what all the other people...
and that you could take from context that
you
the
didn't
orange
need to soak.
juice and
true.
the toast are separate.
But sometimes you can't. If you say the and, it's like so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. Well, who was together, or were they just always also at the same place? So that the and could mean togetherness. Laurel and Hardy, that's an old reference, but you get the idea. Anyway, go ahead.
I would never say you shouldn't use the Oxford comma, but I don't. I mean, I think I probably use it more when I think that there might be a misunderstanding.
Okay.
If I don't use it.
So you're loosey-goosey with your Oxford comma.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is interesting. You do what I do so many times with people. You take this on a case-by-case basis. So,
I take my Oxford commas on a case-by-case basis.
Hey, before we go, we have to see how we did with the Oscar predictions.
Oh, yeah.
Did you watch the Oscars?
I did watch the Oscars.
I'm going to give you my real quick synopsis.
Okay.
I didn't. It was way too long. It wasn't as funny as I thought it would be. I love Conan O'Brien, but I didn't think he brought his A game, and I love him. I think he's great.
Oh, I thought he was great.
But it wasn't. I think part of it also is the thing went too long. Look, if you are fast forwarding through part of the Oscars, there's something wrong.
I fast forwarded a little bit because I got in on it a little bit late, and I was just wanting to catch up because I knew it was going to be over before 10. I have a very strict bedtime, and I wanted to
fast forward to the animated short.
Some of those. I mean, I knew I could read about it later if there was anything. I knew I had recorded it if I wanted to go back and see anything that I missed. But I thought that
too long.
Conan did great. I think. Well, I mean, too long. We knew it was going to be long.
It starts at 6 o'clock.
It did.
I mean, 6 o'clock is 4 o'clock in California.
Yeah.
So there are red carpets going on. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Just odd. And I thought it was a little bit long. But anyway, let's look and see how we did on our predictions.
Do you want to go through them on a case-by-case basis, or do you want me to just tell you that I won?
Oh, shoot. I figured you won.
Not by a lot. Only by twice as many as you.
Oh, boy. We were both off on Best Actress. We thought it'd be Demi Moore.
We were. So, okay.
And I did pick Brody. You picked Chalamet.
Yeah, you did. You got that right. You got, I picked Zoe Saldana. You picked Monica Barbaro, and Zoe Saldana did win. We both picked Karen Culkin. We both got that right.
That's right.
We both thought that Demi Moore would win, and she did not. We were both wrong there. I thought little Timmy Chalamet would win, and you thought Adrian Brody would, and you were right there.
But you won both of the.
I did.
Nora won everything.
I won Best Director, and listen, I won Best Director. I chose. I made the right choice. I guessed right for Best Director and Best Picture. So yeah, I had 4 of them right, and you had 2 of them right.
We did that little silly song celebrating the movies at the end of our predictions.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly, what's his name? Sean Baker.
Yes.
Sean Baker, in his last speech, basically said the title of that little song, "Let's Go to the Movies."
Go back. Yep.
He was saying, "Go back to the theater."
Yeah.
And theaters, please welcome people back, and distributors, please put movies first in theaters. Anyway, I thought that was kind of fun.
Absolutely.
So, all right. And that is Wilder Show Scattershoot. Remember, wildershow.com is where you find us on the web. Instagram. Check out the Instagram account. You can search Wilder Show Pod. You'll find it. If you want to send us an email, just email to podcast@wildershow.com. If you want some of the links to stories, you can do that, or just any thoughts, comments. Wilder Show Podcast drops Tuesdays, Fridays, 6 a.m. Central Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. So please like, rate, follow, subscribe, and share, and we will see you next time.
Do